Now to fetch the user's current location when this button here is pressed, we can add a new method here to location input state, and I'll name it getCurrentLocation. And in this method, I now wanna execute the code you can see here on this location package README page. I'll just copy that code and paste it in there. And since this code uses a wait, I'll add async here. And to unlock these special types like location, which are provided by the location package, I'll of course also add an import where I import this location package and from there the location.dart file, so that all these extra classes and so on are available. And this new keyword here is actually not needed anymore. That is some old Dart code. Now here I'll also rename these variables to not have leading underscores, also in all the places where they are being used, just to be in line with all the suggestions I'm getting here in Visual Studio Code. And that should therefore then give us this location data in the end here, after checking whether the service is available and we have appropriate permissions. Now this location data, which we're getting in the end, will be an object that will have a couple of properties. For example, it will have a latitude and longitude property, which is simply, guess what? The latitude and longitude of that picked location. And it's this location information which I then also want to use to generate such a map snapshot and also to get the human readable address of that location, because latitude and longitude alone might not be too helpful. And that's therefore what I want to do as a next step. But before we do that, I at least want to show if it technically would work to get a location. So for that here, I'll print my location data and then there the latitude and also the longitude to see if I am getting some values here eventually. And I also want to show some loading spinner whilst we are fetching the user's location. So for that here, in this location input state class, we can add a new variable, the picked location. And I'll set this to type location, which is this type provided by the location package, the same type this location data is of. And it may be null initially, hence this question mark. But I'll also add an extra variable, is getting location, which initially is false, but which I'll set to true once we start getting the location. So here, instead of get current location, there I'll set is getting location to true. And of course, this should be wrapped with set state here to make sure that the UI can be updated and the build method is re-executed. And I'll actually not do that here now that I think about it, but instead after these checks, so that I really only show that spinner once we are starting to get the user's location. So right before calling get location here, which can take a while. Getting the user's location can take a while. So then here I'll set is getting location to true. And I'll set it to false once we're done, so right thereafter. But again, as mentioned, this can take a while. And now we can use is getting location to show a loading spinner. And we might want to show this loading spinner instead of these buttons, or maybe inside of this preview container. And that is indeed what I'll do. I'll go to my build method here and add a new variable, preview content, which by default should be this text here. But then I'll add a if check and check if is getting location is true, in which case preview content here should be such a circular progress indicator. That can be a const widget. And it's then this preview content that should be shown inside of this container. And now with that, we just have to make sure that getCurrentLocation, this method here, is called when we click this button. So we should set it as a value for onPressed here. And if we do that and save that and reload everything, if we go here and I click getCurrentLocation, I again get an error if I take a look at my debug console. And the reason for that is that, as mentioned before, I do recommend that you stop the running debugging session and you restart your app if you add a package that uses native device features, like this location package does. With that, once it restarted and you then try again, you should now be able to see this permission pop-up, which of course might look different depending on the device you're on, where you now have to grant this app permission to pick a location. So here I will grant that permission, and you see that loading spinner. And then of course we still see no preview here because we haven't added that functionality yet. But if we take a look at the debug console, there we should see some latitude and longitude coordinates. So that's working. And as you saw, asking for permission worked, and we did check whether we had permission or not. But with all of that, we were able to pick a location. And of course, this also works on iOS. If you run the app on a real device there, you can now not just take a picture, but also pick a location.